Primary Color Mixing Monsters with Ms.Boley and Olivia. Here are the supplies that you're going to need. I recommend using thicker paper or watercolor paper if you have it, because we're going to be pouring a little bit of water onto our paper, and the paper will need to be able to absorb the water. So if possible, use thicker paper or watercolor paper. We're going to be using our watercolor paint set and a paintbrush, and we'll need some small cups or containers. I just used some little yogurt containers that I had saved from the recycling bin. You're going to need 3 of them. A drinking straw is also required, or something that you can blow air through. If you're not able to use a straw, you can use a hairdryer, or just kind of improvise whatever you might have at home. And then we'll need a pen or Sharpie marker to outline our monsters once we create the watercolor blob. So before we start, we're going to need to talk about some different words and terms. So we're trying to learn about the primary colors and what happens when we mix them. And this is also meant to give us some time to experiment and have fun with new materials. So the primary colors, there are 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. This might be familiar to you from last year. And when we mix the primary colors, we get the secondary colors, purple, orange, and green. But it's not quite that simple. When we mix different amounts of the primary colors, so maybe a lot of red and a little bit of yellow, something different will happen than if we mixed a lot of yellow and a little bit of red. So this is kind of a color mixing experiment that we're going to do. We're also going to need to know these 2 words. So opaque means you can't see through it. So see those 2 color blobs on the left side? I can't see the dark green underneath the light green. I can't see through the light green. So that means it is opaque. I cannot see through it. Something else that is opaque is a wall. I can't see through a wall. Okay? The other word we need to know is transparent. So transparent means we can see through it. So I can see through the red color blob on the right side, and I can see the brown color blob underneath showing through the red. Another thing that is transparent is a window. I can see through a window. All right, so now that we know those terms, we've reviewed the primary and secondary colors, we're going to get started. All right, we have our materials. We have 3 cups, 1 for each of the primary colors. We're going to pour a tiny bit of water into each cup. So I'm pouring about a tablespoon. Your learning coach can help you just pour a tiny bit of water. So there we go. All right, now what I've done is I've dipped my paintbrush into the yellow watercolor paint, and I swirled it around, and then I dipped it into the water. And what I'm trying to do is I'm making a wash of watercolor paint, and I'm trying to make the wash as opaque as I can. So right now, the wash is transparent. There's not very much paint in there yet. So I can still see the bottom of the container. But if I add a bit more paint, it's gonna get a bit more opaque. It might not be completely opaque because it's yellow and it's a lighter color. But if I continue to swish my brush around in the watercolor paint and then I swish it in the water, it's gonna get more and more opaque. So that means it's gonna be darker when I pour it onto my paper. All right, so that's what you're gonna do too. You're gonna swish your brush around in your paint and then swish it into the water. Try to mix an opaque wash. There, that's looking pretty opaque. I can't see the bottom of the container as much. All right, now Olivia is going to take over. She's going to do the same, but she's going to use red, and she's going to do the same with blue as well. So we're going to have our 3 primary colors, And we're gonna have washes made for all 3. All right, so let's speed up the video and we'll join back up with Olivia once she has those 2 colors mixed up. All right, now we have all 3 of our opaque, as we can get them, washes. Now I have my piece of watercolor paper and I'm going to pour a tiny blob. I don't want to let this get out of control right yet. I'm just going to do small blobs onto my paper. So 2 separate blobs. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my straw. Remember, if you don't have one or you can't use a straw, you can use a hairdryer or something else that can blow air. And then I'm just gonna blow the paint around the page and see what happens as it mixes. I wanna get a really unique, interesting blob shape. And then I found that it didn't really make orange, it kind of stayed pretty red. So I'm adding some more yellow to see if I can get more of a brighter orange. Once you're happy with your blob, stop blowing on it and you can move on to a new sheet of paper. Carefully move this out of the way and let it dry somewhere. It will take maybe a whole day to dry, so make sure that it's out of the way. Now we're gonna try using red and blue and see what happens. So you can always pick 2 of the primary colors and mix them, and you'll get a secondary color. But if you mix all 3 of them together, you'll likely get brown. So just something to think about. So don't try to mix all 3 unless you want your monster blob to be brown. So we're going to include the mixing and the blowing with the straw, just so you can see what happens when we tried it. Gonna try blue and yellow. We're hoping to get green. The tricky part is that sometimes the yellow isn't a very strong color and it makes it hard for it to show through the blue, and sometimes we end up just with a light blue. So I would suggest using a lot of yellow and just a little bit of blue and see what happens. Wow, it turned out really cool. So now you're going to take your pieces of paper, put them aside so that they won't be disturbed, and let them dry. And we'll meet back when they're all dry, and we're gonna draw a monster from these blobs that we've created. Thanks for watching.